Hello! In today's video, we shall learn in detail about human nervous system. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding about the central nervous system comprising of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system comprising of cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and autonomic nervous system. Let us begin with the introduction to the nervous system of human body. The nervous system is a network of neurons which controls and coordinates the activities of the body by transmitting signals called nerve impulses to and from different parts of the body. The nervous system can be broadly divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system lies along the mid-dorsal part of the body and comprises of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain lies within the cranium, while the spinal cord lies within the vertebral column. The central nervous system receives, processes, and responds to sensory stimulus. The peripheral nervous system is a system of nerves that develop from central nervous system and acts as a channel between the central nervous system and the body. The peripheral nervous system is further subdivided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system carries commands from brain to the muscles for movement and also deliver information from senses to the brain. It consists of 31 pairs of spinal nerves and 12 pairs of cranial nerves. The autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary activities like the heartbeat, respiration, blood pressure, etc. It can be divided into sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, and enteric nervous system. During emergency, the sympathetic nervous system controls fight or flight responses. The parasympathetic nervous system relaxes the body after danger or stress and also controls the basic functions of the body. The enteric nervous system regulates the activity of gastrointestinal tract. Let us summarize it. The nervous system can be broadly studied under the central nervous system comprising of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system including nerves that travel from the spinal cord and brain. The peripheral nervous system can be further subdivided into somatic nervous system with 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Autonomic nervous system, which includes sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, and enteric nervous system. By the way, if you're getting some value out of this video, please like and share this video so that all of us can learn, unlearn, and relearn together. Also, please consider subscribing the channel and press the bell icon to get instant notification of all the upcoming videos. Let us look into the anatomy and physiology of the nervous tissue. Neuron and glial cells are the two basic types of cells present in the nervous tissue. Neurons or nerve cells are the main structural and functional units of the nervous system. Each neuron consists of a cell body or cyton or soma, a long axon, and short, highly branched dendrites. The cyton contains a nucleus, nasal bodies, and Golgi apparatus. Axons are long, specialized structures arising from the cyton. They conduct impulses away from the nerve cell body or cyton. Dendrites are short, highly branched structures emerging from the cell body. They receive most of the impulses from other neurons. Myelin sheath, which surrounds most of the axons, shows gaps called nodes of Ranvier. These nodes increase the speed of neural impulse transmission. The tip of an axon has swelling called the axon bulb. The ends of an axon may be branched and are known as the synaptic terminals. The gap between a synaptic terminal and the dendrite of another neuron is called synapse. The nerve impulses are transmitted through the synapse. The impulse activates the release of chemicals called neurotransmitters, example acetylcholine and noradrenaline. These neurotransmitters bind to the membrane of effector cell and results in various biochemical changes. The nervous tissue comprises of the gray matter, which contain many cell bodies and dendrites. They are present in the outermost layer of the brain and in the central part of the spinal cord, and the white matter with many axons enveloped by lipid-rich substances called myelin. They are present in the outermost layer of the spinal cord and in the inner part of the brain. Bundle of axons in central nervous system are called tracts, while bundles of axons within the peripheral nervous system are called peripheral nerves. Glial cells or neuroglia are a type of cells present in the nervous tissue with a myelinated sheath. They are called oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system and Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system. They provide framework of tissues, support the neurons, and maintain homeostatic balance. Next, let us learn about the different types of neurons and their functions. Afferent neuron or sensory neurons, which conduct sensory impulses from peripheral tissues to the central nervous system. Efferent neurons or motor neurons, which are made up of motor nerve fibers, carry nerve impulses from the central nervous system to the peripheral tissue or to various parts of the body to perform a particular function. Association neurons, which are located in the brain and the spinal cord, connect sensory and motor centers. Each neuron has a single axon, but the number of dendrites may vary. Based on the number, they are known as unipolar, bipolar, multipolar, and pseudo-unipolar. The unipolar neurons have only one process that come out from the cyton. The bipolar neurons have one axon and one dendrite stretching out from the cyton or the cell body. Multipolar neurons have one axon but number of dendrites. Pseudo-unipolar neurons have one axon that extend from the cyton for a very short distance and then split into two branches. Next, let us understand the structure and functions of human brain. The brain and the spinal cord are surrounded by connective tissue membranes. Dura mater is the outermost tough, thick and fibrous connective tissue and is protective in function. Arachnoid mater is the middle, thin and vascular connective tissue, which is both protective and nutritive in function. Pia mater is the innermost thin membrane. It is highly vascular and nutritive in function. The cerebrospinal fluid circulates in the subarachnoid space around the brain and the spinal cord and in the ventricles of the brain. Cerebrospinal fluid acts as a shock absorber and protects the brain from any type of mechanical injury. It protects the brain from desiccation or dehydration. It helps in exchange of nutrients. It assists in the removal of waste products from the brain. Biochemical constituents and electrolytes present in the cerebrospinal fluid maintain the osmotic pressure inside the cranium. Cerebrospinal fluid balances the temperature of the central nervous system. The human brain can be divided into the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain includes the cerebrum, olfactory lobes, and the diencephalon. The midbrain comprises of cerebral peduncles and corpora quadrigemina. The hindbrain includes the cerebellum, Pons varolii, and the medulla oblongata. Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain and is divided into two cerebral hemispheres by a thick band of transverse nerve fibers called corpus callosum. Each hemisphere has a cavity called lateral ventricle and is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. The two lateral ventricles come in contact with the third ventricle or diacle of diencephalon through a narrow opening called foramen of Monro. The surface of the cerebrum is highly folded due to elevations, gyri, and depressions, sulci, which increase the surface area. The outer part of the cerebral hemisphere is called cerebral cortex. It is formed of grey matter containing a number of cytons. The inner part of the cerebral hemisphere is called cerebral medulla. It is formed of white matter containing axons of neurons. Three wide sulci, namely central sulcus, lateral sulcus, and parieto-occipital sulcus divide each cerebral hemisphere into four lobes, namely frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. Frontal lobe helps with judgment, creativity, memory, muscle control, intelligence, etc. Parietal lobe assists with sensory perception like pain, touch, temperature, and integration. Temporal lobe includes Wernicke's area or sensory speech area concerned with sensation of temperature, touch, pressure, and pain. Broca's area or motor speech area concerned with speech and movement of tongue, lips, and vocal cords, and limbic area involved with learning, memory, etc. Occipital lobe helps with sight, distance, and depth perception. Olfactory lobes are a pair of small club-shaped solid structures present in the anterior part of the cerebrum. It has a swollen part called olfactory bulb and a stalk called olfactory tract. Olfactory lobes communicate the sense of smell to temporal lobes of the cerebrum. Diencephalon is present below the corpus callosum and above the midbrain. It consists of 4 parts, namely epithalamus or roof, thick lateral walls or thalamus, hypothalamus or floor, and a cavity called the third ventricle. Epithalamus is thin and its anterior part is fused with pia mater to form anterior choroid plexus. Behind the plexus, the epithalamus bears a pineal stalk whose tip possesses an endocrine gland called the pineal body. It secretes serotonin, which is involved in metabolic activities and in regulating body temperature, and melatonin, which is concerned with the biological rhythm which deals with physical, mental, and behavioral changes. Thalamus is mainly formed of grey matter. All sensory impulses except olfactory impulses are communicated through thalamus to the brain. Hypothalamus consists of white matter and scattered masses of grey matter known as hypothalamus nuclei. It shows a crossing of optic nerves known as optic chiasma, pituitary gland, and a pair of rounded structures called mammillary bodies. Pituitary gland is otherwise known as the master gland. Diencephalon acts as the relay center and assists with processing motor and sensory impulses between brain, spinal cord, and various areas of cerebral cortex. It controls many autonomic functions of the peripheral nervous system. It maintains homeostasis or a steady internal physical and chemical conditions. It acts as a link between nervous system and endocrine system. It secretes neurohormones which has an impact on the pituitary gland. Midbrain is a small, thick-walled area present between Diencephalon and Pons varolii. It consists of many groups of nerve cells dispersed in white matter. The 3 parts of midbrain are ether, cerebral peduncles or crura cerebri, and corpora quadrigemina. Ether is a narrow cavity present in the midbrain, which connects third ventricle of diencephalon with fourth ventricle of medulla oblongata. Crura cerebri is a pair of thick bands of anterior longitudinal nerve fibers that connect forebrain with midbrain and function as relay center. Corpora quadrigemina is formed by 2 pairs of lobes, larger superior corpora colliculi, which receives impulses from optic nerves, and smaller inferior corpora colliculi, which possess centers for auditory reflexes. Midbrain also assists in controlling muscle tone. Hindbrain lies below and behind the cerebrum and above the medulla oblongata. It includes cerebellum, pons varolii, and medulla oblongata. Cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain. It consists of 2 lateral cerebellar hemispheres and a ventral vermis. Cerebellar cortex is made up of grey matter and inner white matter with scattered particles of grey matter. The white matter sends branching tree-like processes arbor vitae in grey cortex. Functions of cerebellum are: it maintains posture and equilibrium of the body, it coordinates voluntary muscular movements, it acts as a regulating center for neuromuscular activities. Brainstem is made up of pons varolii and medulla oblongata. Pons varolii lies on the anterior ventral side of medulla oblongata. It is a crosswise broad band of nerve fibers which form connection between cerebrum and medulla oblongata. It has an outer white matter and an inner grey matter. Pons varolii promotes brain function and also influence sleep cycle. It helps to manage pain signals. It functions as a relay center and acts as a coordinator between different parts of the brain. It also controls the action of involuntary muscles. Medulla oblongata is the posterior part of the brain which continues below as the spinal cord. It is made up of inner grey matter and outer white matter. Part of its roof fuses with the pia mater to form posterior choroid plexus. It takes part in the formation of cerebrospinal fluid. Functions of the medulla oblongata are: it controls involuntary activities like heartbeat, respiration, vasomotor activities, peristalsis, etc. It acts as a reflex center for vomiting, sneezing, coughing, swallowing, etc. Next, let us study the structure of the spinal cord. It is the posterior part of the central nervous system which lies inside the neural canal of the vertebral column. It is soft, slightly flattened, with a narrow cavity called the central canal. The spinal cord is surrounded by a thin innermost pia mater, middle arachnoid mater, and outer tough dura mater. The subdural and subarachnoid space contains cerebrospinal fluid. Epidural space between dura mater and lining of neural canal is filled with adipose connective tissue. Spinal cord extends from atlas vertebra to the second lumbar vertebra and then tapers to form conus medullaris. It remains connected with the coccygeal region by thread-like connective tissue called filum terminale, which is the posterior extension of pia mater. Cervical swelling occurs between fourth cervical vertebra and first thoracic vertebra. Spinal nerves of the upper limb arise from this region. Lumbar swelling occurs between 9th thoracic vertebra and 12th thoracic vertebra. Spinal nerves of the lower limbs arise from this region. Bunch of parallel nerves that occur in lumbosacral parts is known as quadra aquana. These nerves deal with impulses between the lower limbs and the pelvic organs. Next is the transverse section of the spinal cord. It shows two depressions, the posterior median fissure and the anterior median fissure, which separate the spinal cord into left and right incomplete symmetrical halves. The edge-shaped grey matter surrounding the central canal is made up of cell bodies or neurons. The central canal is lined by a single layer of ependymal cells. Grey matter is edge-shaped due to two dorsal horns and two ventral horns. The dorsal horns and the ventral horns come out of the spinal cord to form the dorsal root and ventral root of spinal nerves respectively. The lateral horns of the spinal cord is a small lateral projection of grey matter. They have neurons of autonomic nervous system. Horns of grey matter divide the white matter into 3 columns or funiculi: dorsal, lateral, and ventral funiculi. White matter has bundles of nerve fibers forming ascending and descending tracts. Ascending tracts present in dorsal funiculi are sensory and relay impulses from spinal cord to brain. Descending tracts present in ventral and lateral funiculi are motor tracts and send impulses from brain to spinal cord. Functions of spinal cords are: it is the major center of reflex activity. It acts effectively and spontaneously during emergencies. It conducts and incorporates both sensory and motor impulses to and from the brain. Next is the peripheral nervous system. It is a network of nerves arising from the brain and spinal cord. They may be myelinated or non-myelinated. According to their function, they may be called as sensory, motor, or mixed nerves. Sensory nerves conduct impulses from sense organs to central nervous system. Motor nerves relay signals from brain to various parts of the body. Mixed nerves contain both motor and sensory nerve fibers and therefore performs both the action of sensory nerves and motor nerves. On the basis of their origin, there are 2 types of nerves: cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves emerge from the cranium. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Example: olfactory nerves, optic nerves, auditory nerves, etc. Spinal nerves arise from the spinal cord. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves, 8 pairs of cervical, 12 pairs of thoracic, 5 pairs of lumbar, 5 pairs of sacral, and 1 pair of coccygeal nerves. Each spinal nerve is formed by the fusion of sensory dorsal root and motor ventral root, and therefore it has mixed nerves. Both the roots of each side join in the neural canal of vertebral column. It emerges out of the vertebral column through intervertebral foramen. It divides into ramus dorsalis, ramus ventralis, and ramus communicans. Ramus dorsalis is a short dorsal branch that provide motor receptivity to the deep muscles of the back and sensory stimulus to the skin and muscles of back. Ramus ventralis is the longest ventral branch that stimulates the anterolateral parts of the trunk and both the limbs. Ramus communicans is a short branch that connects the spinal nerves to the sympathetic trunk of autonomic nervous system. Next, we shall go into detail about reflex action. Reflex action is a rapid, automatic, involuntary, unconscious action to specific stimulus which occur through the spinal cord. The path traveled by an impulse during a reflex action from a receptor to the effector organ is termed as reflex arc. It consists of receptor, sensory or efferent neurons, interneurons, motor or efferent neurons, and effector organ. The stimulus for reflex action is recognized by the receptor and is passed into the sensory or efferent neuron. These impulses enter the spinal cord through the dorsal root. The motor nerve fibers detect the signal, come out through ventral root and stimulate the effector organ. Reflexes are of two types: unconditioned or inborn reflexes and conditioned or acquired reflexes. Unconditioned reflexes are present in an individual right from birth. Examples are blinking of eyes, sneezing, knee jerk, etc. Conditioned reflexes are not present in an individual at the time of birth, but are acquired later in the lifetime of an individual through experience, habit, or learning. Example, salivation at the sight of food. Next is autonomic nervous system. It is a component of the peripheral nervous system that controls involuntary physiological processes. It responds to dangerous or stressful situations. It governs fight or flight responses. Based on its functions, it is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system emerge from thoracic and lumbar regions of the spinal cord. It is formed of 21 to 22 pairs of sympathetic ganglia linearly arranged on either side of the vertebral column. Preganglionic fibers emerge from all thoracic segments and 3 upper lumbar segments of the spinal cord, hence known as thoracolumbar outflow. There are collateral ganglia, namely celiac, superior mesenteric, and inferior mesenteric. Postganglionic fibers develop from lateral or collateral ganglia and stimulate different organs. The fibers are adrenergic, for which the neurotransmitter is either adrenaline, noradrenaline, or dopamine. Parasympathetic nervous system emerge from the brain as well as from the sacral segments of the spinal cord and hence known as craniosacral outflow. Parasympathetic nervous system consists of parasympathetic ganglia which occur near or within the visceral organs. They receive preganglionic fibers of craniosacral outflow and give rise to postganglionic fibers. Preganglionic fibers develop from the brainstem and lateral horns of spinal cord in the sacral region. Postganglionic fibers are very short and come out of the parasympathetic ganglia located in or near the visceral organs and stimulate their muscles. They control the activity of visceral organs by secreting a neurotransmitter, namely acetylcholine. Hence, the fibers are said to be cholinergic. Enteric nervous system is an independent network of nerve fibers that innervate the viscera. They control gastrointestinal behavior like secretion of digestive enzymes, regulating movement of contents, stimulating smooth muscle of the intestine. They also control motor functions and regulate immune and endocrine system. So today we have learnt in detail about the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. I have some practice questions for you. Please share your answers in the comments section below. You can pause the video and write down the questions if you like. Thank you so much for your time and participation. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider subscribing the channel and press the bell icon to get instant notification of all the upcoming videos. Also, if you want to discuss any particular topic in biology, please mention that in the comments section below. I'll see you there. Goodbye. All the best.